بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Let's move forward to the 13th hadith in the chapter, the 41st hadith in the book. And obviously we're still in Kitab al-Tahara, the book of purification. The author, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, he says, may Allah have mercy upon his soul, وعن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها أنها قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعجبه التيمن في تنعله وترجله وطهوره وفي شأنه كله متفق عليه. Once more, the Arabic text says وعن عائشة رضي الله عنها أنها قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعجبه التيمن في تنعله وترجله وطهوره وفي شأنه كله متفق عليه. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, the Prophet ﷺ was highly fond of using his right hand and beginning with his right side in all of his affairs. Getting dressed and putting on his shoes, combing his hair, making wudu, washing up, etc. And the hadith is agreed upon by the two sheikhs, Al-Bukhari and Muslim. طيب. So before we read the commentary of this hadith and the classical, traditional explanation and what the scholars of the past said regarding this hadith, the main lesson from this hadith, the gist of this hadith, the main ruling that we're to take from this hadith is the recommendation of using the right side first, starting with the right side first, with the right hand first, especially in acts of worship. Especially in acts of purification, such as wudu, such as ghusl, and some scholars say such as using the toothstick, the miswak or the siwak. Also, the recommendation of starting with the right side or using the right hand when getting dressed, when putting on one's shoes, when combing or brushing one's hair. Khairan inshallah. And obviously the hadith is agreed upon, no issue nor any discrepancy concerning its authenticity. Moving forward. As-San'ani rahimahullah says, قال ابن دقيق العيد هو عام مخصوص بدخول الخلاء والخروج من المسجد ونحوهما فإنه يبدأ فيهما باليسار. قيل والتأكيد بكله يدل على بقاء تعميمه بدفع التجوز عن البعض. طيب. In general, there are times and there are instances in which the Prophet ﷺ didn't start with the right side and didn't do the right hand or the right foot first, such as leaving the masjid and other places and things like this. But the majority of the time, in most cases, starting with the right. Okay. والحديث دليل على استحباب البداءة بشق الرأس الأيمن في الترجل والغسل والحلق وبالميامن في الوضوء والغسل والأكل والشرب وغير ذلك. The hadith proves is that it is recommended to begin with the right side of one's head when performing wudu. And when putting on your shoes, your sandals, making the ghusl, shaving your head, and starting off with the right sides in wudu, ghusl, eating and drinking, etc. As we have explained and simplified. All right. Sanani rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, قال النووي قاعدة الشرع المستمرة البداءة باليمين في كل ما كان من باب التكريم والتزيين وما كان بضدها استحب فيه التياسر. Nawawi, may Allah have mercy upon him, he says is that there is a rule from the deen there is a qaida, a maxim, an axiom, a major rule in the deen which is consistent throughout all rulings. And this maxim is the recommendation of beginning with the right side as long as that is a noble act. Takreem, an act in which you are doing with the purpose of honor and nobility and prestige. Anything that pertains to adorning yourself and beautifying yourself. As far as the opposite, then one should use the left hand with regards to relieving oneself, cleaning oneself when you relieve yourself, and things like this. Okay? Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Alright, let's move forward to the next hadith. The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, he says, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا توضأتم فابدأوا بميامنكم أخرجه الأربعة وصححه ابن خزيمة. Once more the hadith states وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا توضأتم فابدأوا بميامنكم أخرجه الأربعة وصححه ابن خزيمة. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, whenever you perform wudu, begin with the right side. Start with your right sides. When you offer wudu, when you make wudu, start with your right sides. Khairan inshallah. This hadith is collected by the four, meaning Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah, and is made authentic by Al-Hafidh Ibn Khuzaymah. May Allah have mercy on him. Tayyib. The gist of this hadith is like the previous hadith. The preference, the recommendation of starting with the right side, right hand, right part of your head, etc., right part of your body. However, this hadith, one can take from it the obligation of doing so. And not just the sheer preference, and not just the sheer recommendation, but instead the obligation of doing so, that it's mandatory. إِذَا تَوَضَّأْتُمْ, when you make wudu, فَابْدَأُوا, as a commanding verb. As-Sanani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَالْحَدِيثُ دَلِيلٌ عَلَى الْبُدَاءَةِ بِالْمَيَامِنِ أو بالميامن عند الوضوء في غسل اليدين والرجلين وأما غيرهما كالوجه والرأس فظاهر أيضا شمولهما إلا أنه لم يقل أحد بهم فيهما ولا ورد في أحاديث التعليم بخلاف اليدين والرجلين فأحاديث التعليم وردت بتقديم اليمنى فيهما على اليسرى وفي حديث عثمان الذي مضى وغيره والآية مجملة بينتها السنة. He says the hadith proves is that one should start with the right when they make wudu, when they wash their hands, and when they wash their feet. Washing the hand and washing the feet. As far as washing one's face and washing one's head, he says then the zahir, that which is apparent from the hadith, organically taken from the hadith, is that the face and the head are included in starting off with the right side as well. He says, however, no scholar has said this. No one has ever adopted this view. Obviously, pausing the translation, just because a scholar doesn't hold an opinion or no one is quoted to have said it doesn't mean that we don't take it from the hadith. If the hadith is plain, zahir, we take what's plain until proven to be otherwise. Wallahu ta'ala alam. He says another reason why maybe one may say why no scholar has adopted this view is that the ahadith regarding wudu, and when the Prophet ﷺ taught the people the wudu, and when the Sahaba instructed the people in the prophetic wudu, it doesn't state that they started with the right side of their faces. The Prophet washes right side of his face first. But it only says hands and feet. Hands and feet. Okay? Hands and feet. The famous hadith of Uthman radiallahu anhu and others. And obviously the ayah is inexplicit, and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ gives the explicit explanation. All right. The next point of discussion, he says, وَاخْتُلِفَ فِي وُجُوبِ ذَلِكَ وَلَا كَلَامَ فِي أَنَّهُ الْأَوْلَى. He says, now, what is the ruling on starting off with the right concerning hands and feet? Do you have to? Is it an absolute must? There's no difference of opinion. No scholar says that isn't best. They all agree that it's best. When you make wudu, you should start with the right hand. You should wash your right foot first. That's clear. Making ghusl, start off with the right side. That's best. But is it obligatory in the wudu? Do you have to do it? فعند الحدوية يجب لحديث الكتاب وهو بلفظ الأمر وهو للوجوب في أصله وباستمراره فعله صلى الله عليه وسلم فإنه ما روي أنه توضأ مرة واحدة بخلافه إلا ما يأتي من حديث ابن عباس ولأنه فعله بيانا للواجب فيجب ولحديث ابن عمر وزيد بن ثابت وابي هريرة أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ على الولاء ثم قال هذا وضوء لا يقبل الله الصلاة إلا به وله طرق يشد بعضه بعضا. So the first view adopted by some scholars is that one must start off with the right. From their proofs and evidences is this hadith and the other narrations as well, and other points that they use as well to summarize it. وقالت الحنفية والجماعة لا يجب الترتيب بين أعضاء الوضوء ولا بين اليمنى واليسرى من اليدين والرجلين. قالوا والواو في الآية لا تقتضي الترتيب وبأنه قد روي عن علي رضي الله عنه أنه بدأ بمياسره وبأنه قال ما أبالي بشمالي إلى آخره. And the Hanafi scholars and others, they say one doesn't have to wash everything in order. You don't have to wash the body parts in order. Nor do you have to do the right first before the left, the hands and the feet. And they have different reasonings, different ways of looking into or at the proofs and the evidences. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And obviously, the safest thing to do is to start off with the right and the left. Furthermore, the safest thing for sure is to make your wudu in order. No doubt about that. No doubt concerning that. But here, that isn't the main discussion. The main discussion is concerning right hand, right foot, right arm, right ankle first. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. The next hadith, the author says, وعن المغيرة بن شعبة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ فمسح بناصيته وعلى العمامة والخفين. أخرجه مسلم. Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu anhu narrated that one day the Messenger of Allah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, offered wudu. فَمَسَحَ بِنَاصِيَتِهِ, and he wiped upon his forehead. وَعَلَى الْعِمَامَةِ, and he wiped upon his turban. وَالْخُفَّيْنِ, and he wiped upon his leather socks. And the hadith is collected by Muslim. Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam one day performed wudu, wiping his forehead, wiping over his turban, and wiping over his leather socks. And this hadith is collected by Muslim. Okay. The main lesson from this hadith is that, first and foremost, it's permissible to wipe over a turban. And when a man is wearing a turban, he can't just wipe over his forehead. Naam. Khairan inshallah. Sanani says, and also the hadith proves the permissibility of wearing khufs and wiping over them in wudu. And of course, there are conditions for that, which will be explained later on, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, a few questions. First question is, does wearing a turban take the same ruling or rulings as leather socks? With regards to, you can't wipe over the turban unless you've made wudu on your head first, like the leather socks. Is that the same? One has a time restriction with regards to wiping over the turban like he has concerning leather socks. There are conditions for the turban. How big or how thick does the turban have to be? How long does the turban have to be? Does it have to go under his neck and throat? Does the turban have to have a tail? If a person removes his turban, is his wudu broken? Like people discuss or differ over concerning the socks. Can a person wipe over something over top of the turban? Like a person who wears shoes over their socks? What heck of that? Tayyib. Last but not least, what is the ruling on wiping over other things that are similar to turbans? So in the Islamic world today, we have different styles and different types of headdress or headdresses. There are those who wear a shawl that's wrapped up, whether it be in Oman or United Arab Emirates or some brothers from Somalia. There are those in parts of Yemen, different types of shawls they wear in Yemen, tied up, wrapped up. The traditional or the classic shimag or ghutra bayda in Saudi, Medina, etc. The igal on top of the shimag in Kuwait. And other types of headdress which are similar to turbans, but not an absolute turban. And of course, there are different styles of turban or turbans worn in the Islamic world today, such as our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. May Allah bless them. Famous, infamous for wearing turbans. The Muslims who are known as Tawariq. Okay, in the deserts of North Africa, semi-sub-Saharan Africa, right? Of course, our brothers and sisters from the Sudan, they're famous for wearing white turbans, etc. And brothers and sisters from other parts of the world, whether it be Bangladesh or Pakistan, India, different parts of the world, right? Do those turbans fall under the turbans that a Muslim is allowed to make wudu over top of and wipe over top of? What are the conditions of wiping over the turban, right? Let alone Muslims who wear what we call in the United States a kufi. Or Muslims who have, different types of headdress or wrappings, like the scarves that are worn in Palestine and Jordan. But they wrap them up. They have made like a different twist on how they wrap it up. Or, in America, some people wear t-shirts wrapped up on their heads like a turban. Does Islam only support one culture? Why am I wearing a t-shirt on my head? Or a do-rag, even better. If you want to get technical, a do-rag. It's keeping my head warm. It's keeping my head cool. It's difficult to take it off. I don't want to mess up my waves, etc. Or just the plain kufi. Can I wipe over my kufi? Can I wipe over my hat? It's cold outside, etc. Last but not least, can a woman wipe over her khimar? Can a sister wipe over her khimar? Does that take the ruling of the turban? So all of these issues pertain to this hadith and pertain to this chapter and this discussion. Khairan inshaAllah ta'ala. الصنعاني رحمه الله تعالى, he says, والحديث دليل على عدم جواز الاقتصار على مسح الناصية. وقال زيد بن علي عليه السلام كذا. وأبو حنيفة لا يجوز الاقتصار. وقال ابن القيم ولم يصح عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم في حديث واحد أنه اقتصر على مسح بعض رأسه البتة، لكن كان إذا مسح بناصيته كمل على العمامة كما في حديث المغيرة هذا. وقد ذكر الدارقطني أنه رواه عن 60 رجلا. وأما الاقتصار على العمامة بالمسح فلم يقل به الجمهور. فقال ابن القيم أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يمسح على رأسه تارة، وعلى العمامة تارة، وعلى الناصية والعمامة تارة، والمسح على الخفين يأتي له باب مستقل، ويأتي حديث المسح على العصائب. Sanani then discusses this in more detail by saying, or he says, the hadith proves is that one is not to wipe only on his forehead. When you're wearing a turban, you should not suffice yourself with just wiping over your hairline or your forehead. Some scholars, they say, is that it's unlawful just to wipe on the forehead. Ibn Qayyim, may Allah have mercy upon him, he says, there is no hadith that proves that the Prophet ﷺ would only wipe his forehead, and that's it. He would suffice himself with the wiping of his forehead. There's no hadith that proves that. Rather, whenever the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, Ibn Qayyim says, wiped on his forehead, he would finish the rest by wiping over the entire turban. So Ibn Qayyim says he would do both, and he would never ever just do the forehead. Sanani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, commenting on Ibn Qayyim's quote, like it's mentioned in the hadith of Mughira, the hadith that we're discussing. He then says, speaking on the different people who narrated this hadith. Now, what is the ruling on just wiping over the turban? That's the next issue of discussion. I don't want to wipe on my forehead. I just want to wipe on the turban. He says most of the scholars held the view is that a person shouldn't do that. And that a person has to or should wipe on both. Sanani then quotes Ibn Qayyim by saying again, the Prophet ﷺ occasionally would wipe on his head. And occasionally he would wipe on the turban. And occasionally he would wipe both. Understand? So that which seems to be most correct is that all three are lawful. Scenario A, take the turban off, wipe the head. Scenario B, keep the turban on, but just wipe over the turban. Scenario C, and wipe a little bit of the forehead and finish the rest on top of the turban. But not to just wipe over the forehead. Okay. As far as wiping over the leather socks, then that will be explained in a separate chapter, as we have said. That's the end of that hadith and its discussion. Last thing that I will mention regarding the conditions that some scholars place on the turban and wearing a turban and wiping over a turban. And from that is that the turban has to be an Arab or an Arabian turban, i.e. meaning a turban that's not like those of the mushrikun, those of the polytheists and the pagans. Now, if you look today, there are different races, and there are different cultures, there are different ethnicities, there are different religions and faiths, spiritual movements that wear turbans. So in New York City, you have a lot of people that are of the Sikh religion or Sikh tradition. These individuals who come, I would say, predominantly from India, they come from different regions, different lands, Punjab, etc. If they're religious and if they're practicing their Sikhism, they all wear turbans. All of the men wear turbans. And it's very interesting how they have in their Sikh religion certain conditions and prerequisites and certain articles of faith that they must have on them at all time. They can never be naked and void of these articles, and they call them signs of devotion or proofs of devotion. And from that is the covering of the head and the wearing of the turban. Not to shave one's hair, silver bracelet that is upon the wrist of all men, a small dagger, and other things as well. What's important is they're infamous for wearing turbans. And I remember some years back, after 9/11, somebody got in a cab in New York City, and the cab driver happened to be Indian, and a non-Muslim stabbed him in the neck. And the reason why he stabbed him in the neck is he thought that he was a Muslim. And, he wanted to take out his anger and frustration against the terrorist Muslims who destroyed the Twin Towers and killed all of those people, innocent, harmless civilians, so on and so forth. We're not here to talk about terrorism or terrorists or the attacks of 9/11. We're not here to talk about none of that stuff. What's important is he confused the Sikh to be a Muslim. So there's good in that and there's bad in that. So the concept of Muslim always being distinguished. Sikhs don't shave their hair. They don't cut their hair. It's prohibited. Nor do people of other religions and faiths, such as Rastafarians and those who follow the different traditions of Haile Selassie and things like this, especially in New York City. It's known they don't trim their hair. They don't cut their hair. They let everything grow naturally. So one may say, or a third example, Hasidic Jews, or Ashkenazi Jews, or Orthodox Jews, whether they're Zionists in support of Israel, or whether they're against Zionism, against Israel, and they're just practicing their Jewish faith and following the laws, the rabbinic teachings. All of these men wear beards. And you won't find a Jew of this sect or denomination except that he has a full beard. So one may say, how do I know that that person is Muslim? And the Prophet says, trim the mustache, grow the beard, Don't be like the mushrikun. Well, the mushrikun, they have this, the Christians have this, the Jews have this, etc., etc., etc. Then the answer to this question is, the Muslim's beard is always going to be distinguished because the mustache is trimmed, whereas those other faiths, they don't trim their mustaches. The Muslim's turban is supposed to be distinguished, and it isn't supposed to be confused by being a turban of a Sikh or another person of another faith. Even some Rastafaris, they wear turbans as well. The dread, right? They say the naughty dread. He has a big bundle of hair, and sometimes some of them have something that looks like a turban, right? So the scholars of Islam, they put conditions on the turbans that the Muslims are allowed to wear and make wudu over. And the general theme was that there should be a turban known to the Arabs who accepted Islam. And it shouldn't be a turban of the mushrikun. And obviously that's going to be subjective from time to place. And that's a long discussion concerning someone's culture. Someone comes from a non-Muslim, non-Arab, Arabian, Arabic type of background, etc. You get the point I'm trying to make. As regardless of your culture and your style, whatever clothes you wear, it should be something that makes you clearly stand out as a Muslim. He has a beard, the Rastafarian guy, the Jewish guy has a beard, but my beard is different because my mustache is trimmed neatly. He's wearing a turban, but my turban is clearly associated with the Muslims of India, the Muslims of Sudan, etc., etc. You guys get the point I'm trying to make. So there are conditions that the scholars of Islam have placed upon a turban. And of course, a lot of controversy concerning turbans, and a turban being a sign of terrorism and a sign of extremism and a sign of violence, etc., etc., etc. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Khairan, inshallah. We'll stop here. Allah truly knows best, and with him is all success.